Hello everyone, welcome to this video lecture on how I taught my grandmother to read. I am K.Radha, Assistant Professor from the Department of English, KBN College. How I taught my grandmother to read is a story by Sudha Murthy. It is an autobiographical narrative, and in this story she is narrating her childhood experiences in a small village in North Karnataka and her close relationship with her grandmother Kristaka, whom she calls Avva. Now, what are the themes of this story? The story highlights the importance of education, independence, respect for teachers, and also learning has no bar for education. Okay. Now, here, talking about the author Sudha Murthy, she is a renowned Indian author and she is an educationist and also a philanthropist. She is the founder person of a non-profitable charitable organization, Infosys Foundation. Now, she has written extensively in Kannada as well as in English, and many of her works have been translated from Kannada into English. Now, Sudha Murthy always wrote about human values such as kindness, empathy, education, and also self-respect. Now, coming to the story of how I taught my grandmother to read, the story is set in rural Karnataka, and the story explores the transformative power of education across generations. Now, here the story is between a granddaughter who is only 12 years old and a grandmother who is 62 years of age. And it also talks about the courage it takes to begin at a very old age, to begin education at a very old age. Now, here the setting is in a simple village and how the village life goes on. Now, the village is a very remote one, and usually they had no good transport system. So the only means of transportation is the bus, which arrives late in the afternoon. So the daily newspapers came very late, and every Wednesday they used to get these weekly magazines. So the people in the village used to wait for this bus to come, which brought papers, weekly magazines, and also the post. Now, why were all these people eagerly waiting for it? Now, here comes the actual part of the story. Now, in those days, there was this writer called Triveni. She is a very famous Kannada writer who died at a very young age. And in those days, she used to, her novel called Kashi Yatra was published in a magazine called Karmavira. So this is the journey to Kashi, and it became an obsession for Kristaka, the grandmother. So she used to wait for this arrival of the magazine, and she would wait for her granddaughter to read the story for her. Now, what is this Kashi Yatra about? So it is like a catalyst. What do you mean by a catalyst? That which sets off a reaction or a new event. Okay. Each week, the grandmother waited eagerly for the narrator to read the next episode aloud. Now, what is Kashi Yatra about? Kashi Yatra is about an old woman who longs to go to Kashi and worship Lord Visveshwara. Now, for most Hindus, the Kashi Yatra is a very sacred pilgrimage, and everyone considers it as a lifetime achievement. Now, this old lady also, who is the protagonist, spends all her life gathering money, saving money to fulfill this dream of visiting Kashi. But here what happens is, there is a girl who is an orphan. She falls in love, and for her marriage, she has no money. So the twist in this story is that in the ending, you see that this old lady gives up her desire, her ardent desire to go to Kashi, by performing the marriage of this orphan girl. Now she considers that the happiness of this orphan girl is more important than visiting Kashi. Now here Sudhamurti's grandmother identified herself with the protagonist. So she used to follow this story very keenly. So every week when Sudhamurti would read this story for her or the next episode for her, she would listen very keenly. She would remember every detail and repeat it again. So in the evening when the granddaughter and the grandmother would visit to the temple, would go to the temple, she would narrate each and every episode, each and every event in the story exactly and without, and she had a super memory. So then what happens is the narrator has to go out to the next village, to the neighboring village for a marriage. And there she was supposed to spend only 2 days, but it takes 2 weeks. So meanwhile what happens? She returns after the marriage. Then when she meets her grandmother, her grandmother is full of tears. She doesn't understand. Sudhamurti is surprised because her grandmother has faced many difficulties and she had never seen her cry in that manner. Later that night when they are on the terrace, sleeping, open terrace, they are sleeping, the grandmother comes up and sits beside Sudhamurti and she puts her affectionate hands on Sudhamurti. Now Sudhamurti understands that her grandmother wants to say something. So she asks, "Abba, what is the matter?" Then the grandmother explains or expresses her helplessness. So when the narrator left for the wedding, as usual, the magazine with the story Kashi Yatra had come. So she opened the book, and she opened the magazine and looked at the picture. But she could not understand a single word because she has no knowledge. She has never read. She doesn't know how to read. So at a very, she felt very helpless, dependent, and she felt like coming to Sudhamurti, even traveling to the next village in order to get her read the story. But what happens is she felt very embarrassed to ask others. She felt very dependent. What happens is her grandmother, she says, she lost her mother when she was very young and she was married at a very young age, and she spent her life looking after her children and her grandchildren. Though she wanted to learn, though she wanted to get educated, she had no chance. And but she saw that all her children and her grandchildren are well educated. But now when she could not read the story of Kashi Yatra, she felt very dependent, very helpless. So for the first time, she confronts the full weight of her illiteracy. She is unable to access the story she loved. So she also rubs her hands on the book, but of no use. And she also thinks, she is rich, but of what use is money if she is not independent? So what do we understand from this point? We may have money, we may have power, whatever it is, but the real power is in education and in knowledge. So this moment of vulnerability becomes the catalyst, and this makes her take a very important decision in her life. So the grandmother says that she wants to learn to read desperately. Okay? Now when she listens to this story, listens to this desire, when she listens to this desire, she makes fun of her. Grandmother, your hair is grey, your hands are wrinkled, and you work all the time in the kitchen. What can you learn at the age of 62? At this juncture, the grandmother expresses her determination. So I repeat the words which the grandmother says: for a good cause, if you are determined, you can overcome any difficulty or any obstacle. Okay? Learning has no age barrier. Okay? You can learn at any time. All that you need is the will or the determination. So look at the reversal of tradition. The guru is actually the persons who are elder to us are more knowledgeable. But here there is a reversal of the situation. A 12-year-old girl becomes the guru to a grandmother who is 62 years old. So she immediately accepts the grandmother's proposal. Now the grandmother sets a goal or a deadline for her to be able to read, and that is the Dasara festival. Okay, so in a beautiful reversal of tradition, the granddaughter becomes the guru and the grandmother is the devoted shishya or the student. So here the age becomes irrelevant and only the determination of the student mattered. So she started her tuition the very next day. She taught her the alphabet, and now the grandmother proved to be a very dedicated, devoted and a serious student. She practiced with fierce dedication and proving that the will to learn has no expiration day. So here what happens is she used to read and repeat, write and recite continuously. So she worked harder than anybody else. And by the time it is Dasara, she triumphantly completes writing the alphabet. Now what happens is Sudha Murthy used to teach her in a very affectionate manner. Now I'll tell you what happens next. First of all, so when it is Dasara, the grandmother invites the granddaughter and makes her sit on a stool. And then she presents her a frock material, and then she does the most unusual and unexpected thing. So what she does is the grandmother touches the feet of Sudha Murthy, and Sudha Murthy is shocked because according to tradition we respect our elders, and as a mark of respect we touch their feet. But the elders do not touch the feet of the young. So here on the Saraswati Puja day, which is the dedicated to the goddess of knowledge, Krishtaka performs a deeply symbolic act. She touches her grandmother's feet and she honors the young girl as her first teacher. So here Sudhamurthy says when she was teaching her grandmother, she was the only teacher and the grandmother was her only student. And little did she realize at that time that she would become a computer professor and teach thousands of students. But her grandmother was her first student. So here the grandmother touches the feet of the granddaughter, honoring the young girl as her first teacher or her guru. She also says, okay, age has, for being a guru, age is not a limit. Okay, so she reverses the hierarchy. So she says, don't be a guru can be of any age and a student can be of any age. So age is not a limit or a barrier. So respecting the guru is more important. So here, as suggested in the title, in the beginning, I told you the grandmother realizes the importance of education. And then by learning the alphabet, she becomes independent. And then she also talks about lifelong learning, and she also understood how to respect the teachers. I mean, she has shown that respect for a teacher. So what is the deeper meaning of this gesture? This gesture transcends age and hierarchy. So though the grandmother is of 62 years and the teacher is of only 12 years, this is not a barrier for giving respect. Okay, so this affirms that wisdom flows wherever knowledge is shared. Okay, so wisdom or respect, wherever you receive it from, there you should be respectable. Okay, you should respect those who teach you or try to uplift you with knowledge. Okay, so regardless of who gives or receives it. So in return, Sudhamurti actually buys the Kashi Yatra novel, which is published during the Dasra time. So this is a surprise gift for her grandmother. Okay, as soon as her grandmother gifts her with the frock material and touches her feet, then she gives this book to her grandmother. As soon as she takes the book into her hand, her grandmother reads the name of the book, the author, and the publisher. And then she proves herself as a successful student. And her student has come out with flying colors. Now here, when you look at this legacy of learning, education has no age. Now when we look at the journey of Kristaka's journey, it proves that the desire to learn is timeless and that it is never too late to begin. So anybody can start learning. Actually, learning is a lifelong journey. It is never complete. So you can learn anything, anytime, at any age. The power of familial bonds. Now here the love and affection of Sudhamurti, okay, towards her grandmother is shown by teaching her the alphabet and making her independent. The grandmother praises her. Praises her as the best teacher because she taught her with affection within a short period of time and with great devotion. So with great concern. So these are the qualities of a good teacher. Okay, within a short period of time and with affection and with patience, the granddaughter made her grandmother independent and strong and powerful by making her illiterate. So the story here celebrates love and the mutual respect which the granddaughter and the grandmother have, and also the quiet heroism found within ordinary families. So these may not be great achievements in our view, but actually in a closely knit family, there are many heroic acts which we see from our family members. And it also shows the helplessness of women who did not have the opportunity to read. So the granddaughter takes the responsibility of educating her grandmother. And now she can read any novel and she is no longer dependent on anyone to receive knowledge. What the knowledge which is hidden in words, which is locked in words. Now this is open to her by learning the alphabet and by learning how to read and write. So, and it also shows how literacy is dignity. Okay, reading is not merely a skill, it is the ultimate form of independence and self-respect. So once a person learns how to read and write, the world is an open book to anyone. Thank you.